I would say that you already said at 1 o'clock you were taking a break, and I don't appreciate the not on the.
You wouldn't find me
I
there.
just wanted to be sensitive to witnesses that were told that that there would be a hearing at 10:30. And I think that I appreciate that you respected that ultimately, and I just don't feel I should be belittled for requesting that, nor should I be belittled now because it's now time for your break. That will I allow you to have a break? It's insulting. It's not the right decorum.
Mr. Hicks. We're all human. We're all trying to get through this together. Okay. All right, we're going to go ahead and break for 20 minutes. Please return by 1:30. Thank you, Commission.
You should start doing your like you did sometime order in sandwiches, Phil. You know, it's like in the Freeman stuff, you did that. You were sandwiches, I think. Sometimes.
Because actually, well, I think you can look back at it.
Yeah, from June, a month from August, we just needed your autograph.
Oh, that's just been late. Yeah.
Is this Mr. Embry? So I'll call him next and then hopefully that can be quick.
I've been toting them around, you know, for each meeting.
I have all those parking slips in my car for about a year and I'm gonna give to you and you tell me if you've already reimbursed me for it.
Yeah, which, so. You know, I think the threshold is $10, anything under $10. I would recommend you get me the receipt for it
Yeah.
anyway, but as far as attaching it to, I don't have to fill in the proof.
I think these are usually 12.
Okay, which, depending on, I think they give. I think, well, and after that, it just has to have Phil's approval that the travel have, which it's not a big deal, but it's one of those things that they make you jump through an extra.
Sorry about that.
Okay, no worries. So, yeah, just get them over to me and I'll make sure to get them processed.
You lock this room or anything?
You know,
There could be a big hole out of here if somebody
let me,
can come in from the street and carry off all kind of.
let me call Phil or, well, now that ain't gonna work. I'll just phone. Yes, so when you go through the revolving doors, you go almost up to the escalator. And on the right here, you can see they've got food up there and then there's a little.
Thank you.
How long are you anticipating? Hey, Sandy. How long are you anticipating being out? No rush, but we're trying to decide whether I should lock because we've got all these computers, phones, all this stuff. Okay. Okay, that's fine. I didn't know if you're like, well, I'm taking the full 20. Yes. I have no clue. I might walk through the building, because you don't have to go outside. If you wanted to go to like, Potbellies, you can walk underground and. She's gonna be right back. She'll be.
Oh, okay. I just want to get like a water or something. That doesn't need to film. That gives the vending machine down here. That would be a great. I didn't know these rooms were here till I walked.
If there's supposed to be breakout rooms and I was anticipating.
Separation of witnesses, but I never called. I did last time here.
And that's why I was making sure all audio was turned off, the
Yeah.
TVs were turned off, so we could shut the doors.
That's something that should be on like a checklist for a hearing, that the chair asks, if we want to, does anybody want a separation of witnesses and all that kind of stuff?
I told them before that it was ready and I figured I wasn't gonna keep asking. So, They're ready.
It's hard to, well, you go, I'm gonna get, I'll stay here and guard it.
are you,
And then I'm just gonna run up when I get the chance and get something to drink, that's all.
well, in fact, here, you go ahead. I'll wait till you
You
guys.
want me to get you something?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
I'll
No,
I'll pick you up something.
No, I figure I'm gonna run over to Potbellies real quick.
Okay.
But I'll be here. Until
Yeah.
at least one or two people get back. Because electronics have a way of growing legs.
Okay.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah, I'm sitting right here.
Okay, there's actually, this room might be best because it's got.
Okay.
So you have that. All right.
Good. All right, thank you.
You jinxed me, because I didn't think it was cold in here before, but I am freezing over here.
Oh, no. I brought it to the forefront of your mind.
You know, if we say something to Chris, I bet he could turn it, it's almost like the air's on, because I hear something running. It's freezing in here.
It's definitely warmer outside of this. room.
Yeah.
Yes.
Need anything?
No, I'm okay. Thank
Okay.
you. Oh, that's. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Funny.
Hey, Chris? Chris? Okay.
1:30 sharp.
What you said.
Okay, do you have any other witnesses, Mr.
Yes,
Hicks?
the next one's Nelson Embry, the former treasurer.
Very good.
Sorry.
Raise your right hand. Swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Thank you.
Welcome.
I feel like right now is his mic on.
Mr. President.
There we go.
I was asking Chris whether the mics were good enough to pick up when people didn't have them turned on. Thank you, Mr. Embry. Thank you for being here. So you were can you describe your role and when you started and when you ended being the treasurer for Friends of Brian Stewart?
For the record, there should be a Roman numeral 2 after my last name. I have a son who is 3 and a grandson who is 4, and we all live in Pickaway County, so.
Appreciate that.
Well, just as a joke, I'm not going to file any complaints that you
Okay.
filed a report without the right Roman numeral after your name.
Okay, my association with Representative Stewart goes back to days when we were both on, in fact, actually, I encouraged him to become a member of the Asheville Village Council, and that's where we started. And then I encouraged him to run for county commissioner and also state representative. And when he was county commissioner, I was his campaign treasurer there, and also his first run for the state representative. I was his campaign treasurer.
And so I'm more interested in when did you cease to be his treasurer?
Well, after he became the candidate for the state representative, more or less, that's when I sort of bowed out of the position because the Republican Party sort of took over his campaign and everything, so. Now, the report I filed and signed, which you're
Okay.
questioning,
So according to Ms. Cardillone's testimony, you were the treasurer until January of 2022.
yes, that was.
So that would have been after Brian Stewart was in office, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And were you, just for clarity's sake, were you the one doing the treasurer function during that time? Were all the reports that took place any report taken place filed up until January of 2022?
Yes, I would have signed those.
That were yours, and you were signing them as the active treasurer, or was somebody else actually doing the
No,
reports?
well, Brian and I communicated about the reports and we would go over all the reports before I filed them and then
Okay.
signed them.
So
Okay.
you were comfortable with the reports and their
Yes,
accuracy and their completeness? Okay. So I want you to look at, I flipped those pages, so if you don't lose that place where it's open to, that's the page I want you to look at. But if Chris could put up on the screen, it's Exhibit K. So it's page 162 in my file. That's very hard to read but that's maybe just as hard to read, but it's easier. And I don't know that it's that important to zoom it in. Because
Fine.
the question I have is, are you familiar? Let me start with the document, Chris, it's on page 165, which is Brian Stewart's response letter to Mr. Goldstein's
Okay.
request for payment.
I'm
Dated.
not familiar with this document at all. In fact, actually, I was not here at the last hearing you held because I had to take my wife to the James for a checkup. And so really, I have not seen any of these exhibits prior to today.
Well, hold on a second though, but this was a request, flip back to page 162.
Okay, I'm on-
I appreciate you weren't here last time and so I would try to not go too fast or skip past stuff so page 162, and you might have heard Mr. Goldstein testify to this.
Mhm.
This was a first collection attempt that he claimed was in August of 2021. That's page 162, 163, 164. Page 165 is Brian Stewart's response to that, and it's dated September 5th, 2021. And I'm gonna stop right there because you were the treasurer
Yes.
until January of 2022.
Mhm.
Is it your testimony today that this is the first time you're seeing?
Yes, that would be correct.
So as treasurer during this time, that would mean that Mr. Stewart filed this response to an invoice he received without consulting with you.
The information of that would be that, once again, Mr. Stewart and I knew nothing about
Well, hold on, that's not my,
now let me finish. Nothing about these at all until you actually filed the complaint with the Ethics Commission about it some way or another that we should have included this in our report. So how can you fill out your report and then a year and a half later get information that you were supposed to include this, which we still object to because we had no idea that we owed it.
for efficiency purposes, I'm not asking about broader questions right now. I'm just asking, so when Mr. Goldstein sent do you recognize, if you look at page 162,
Okay,
and he can put up on the screen, I apologize for the,
yeah, it's Exhibit K.
do you recognize that address on there, 15075 Home Court?
Yes, that's his, Mr. Stewart's home address.
Was that the address used by the campaign?
Yes,
Okay. Was Mr. Stewart in the habit of giving you all materials received by the campaign?
yes. Mhm.
So
So I
then-
say, we did not receive any of this until after our report was filed.
I didn't ask that question.
Well, I know you didn't ask it, but that's the truth.
Okay, but that's not, I guess the question, if you testified just a second ago, that the letter on page 165, you had never seen until now.
No, that's true. In
So
fact,
that means that Brian Stewart filed a response to a demand for payment from Constant Content without the treasurer of the campaign, who's liable for the reports, being informed of that? No basis for an
well,
objection.
once again, my answer to that is I was unaware.
So that would mean that,
And once again, the whole sum and substance of this is the fact that, yes, he was a representative at that time elected, and all the information was filed through his home address. And so I'm sure that, he really didn't, once again, we didn't know about any of this
I
information.
never asked,
Answered the collection letter, which I have not seen until today, okay? Does that
so
answer
you were
your-
not involved did you receive a copy of the collection letter back in
No,
August or
Never-
September?
As I
So
said, this
you,
is
the treasurer of the campaign,
that was, once again, it's after the fact almost, because once again.
but that's not the question. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to
Well,
ask
you
that
and I
to
are
you guys.
going to be in an argument about that.
We're not-
You want me to say that I did something illegal and false. At the time I filed the campaign report, we knew nothing about this at all.
Okay.
It's all because you filed the complaint.
I appreciate the
with-
editorial.
So
but the
once
statement
again,
you just
I
made,
can't, there's no use for,
Mr. Amber,
yes,
respond to questions when you ask.
Okay, I will.
questions and
All
don't
right.
Go on beyond then. please.
Because it's
It just
a
makes it a lot
re-
easier.
it's a repetitive thing and I'm gonna answer no to most of them.
And that's what
Okay.
it is, but if you just answer the questions he
Okay,
asks,
all right,
it'll make it go a lot better, I
Sure.
think.
I understand that.
so you just said, we were not aware until I filed the report.
That is correct.
Obviously, Brian Stewart was aware before I filed the report because he sent a letter back on September 5th, 2021. Would you agree that that has to be the truth, that he knew? Because he sent a letter back on September 5th. So the we might mean you didn't know, but he certainly knew. He responded in a letter.
Well, it's once again, my answer would be that if that is the case in the date, yes, he knew about it then, okay?
But you didn't know about it,
But I did not know about
which
it.
would have meant that Representative Brian Stewart withheld from you that the campaign for which you're treasurer and you're liable had received a request for payment in August of 2021.
Well,
Yes or no?
the answer would be
Yes or
no,
no?
based upon your interpretation.
Then explain how it's no.
Well, it's no, because, once again, I'm trying to tell you that I knew nothing about it as treasurer when I filed my report.
That's
my
not the
standard
question. I
answer.
apologize, but that's not the question I asked you.
Well, I know that's what you asked, but that's my answer.
So my question was yes or no? Does the fact that you didn't know about this, but Brian Stewart sent a letter back mean that it was withheld from you? Yes or no?
Well, I don't consider it was
Yes
withheld
or
from
no?
me, but the answer would be. as
He's
far as
not
I'm
answering yes or
concerned,
no. This
It's
is the,
no.
Gentlemen,
He's giving you an answer.
so the answer, so you did know about it.
I did not know about it.
Then the.
gentlemen, I want to hear one voice at a time. Ask, answer, ask, answer. Let's do this with intentionality, please.
Well, I mean, the ultimate thing is he.
But then he
wanted
just
the
starts
answer
talking.
Yes,
Is there a question you're responding to right
I
now?
did know about it. So the answer is yes.
So, okay,
Gentlemen.
so we have gotten to the point of the answer is actually yes, that it was withheld from you and you didn't know about it.
Objection.
Well, I don't consider it being withheld. I just didn't know about it.
Were you not the treasurer on September 5th, 2021?
Yes, I was. But, once again, just because he had some communication with his company, I don't think he had to report that to me at all because, once again, we're arguing about who owes what and when.
So you realize, this is a little bit of a sidebar for the commission. This is why I raised the point early on that in normal legal practice, an attorney, Brian Stewart, cannot be pro se representing himself, which he is here, and also represent other parties because they may be at cross purposes. If he withheld information from him, then he would have an explanation of why he didn't put it on a report or revise the report when the time came that the report needed to be revised, or Ms. Cardelloni didn't revise the report when the time came for the report to be revised. So his testimony now, you can see by him saying no when the answer should have been yes, is because he's conflicted because his attorney is a conflicted person where they're both potentially liable. And you guys who are attorneys know this. You know this. That's why you can't be a pro se attorney representing yourself while also representing other parties in the same matter.
Mr. Hicks, is there a question?
No, I'm making a statement to the commission about your process and following proper procedure. I've made the point that I'm going to continue with my questioning, but I
Please
just want to
do.
make the point that what you're doing.
We heard your
Doing this, you
point.
created a
We heard
conflict
your
that's not
point.
permitted.
Please ask your questions.
So why don't you say something like, thanks for making that point?
We're
I'm not the
listening.
bad guy. I'm the citizen trying to get us to have clean campaign finance in Ohio. And I feel
Mr.
like every
Hicks,
time I
if
come here,
your
it's a fight.
points are put in front of this commission in a respectful manner that are not accusatory in nature, they will be received with gratitude, kindly.
Never
And that
happened.
is accomplishable. That is accomplishable, sir.
And I appreciate your
Otherwise,
tone.
please ask and answer directly.
Thank you for your tone. Okay,
Do not.
Colloquy he just put on, first of all, was inappropriate because there was no question, but regardless of that, the entire summary he said is based upon the assumption that Mr. Stewart withheld information. And those are not the facts and evidence at all.
so the fact that you were unaware of the invoice or the response sent by Brian Stewart, would that not mean yes or no, yes, that he withheld that from you?
I'm sorry, Mr. Hicks, this feels like tone. Please address the witness with respect.
I am with respect.
Well,
Yes or no, was the
obvious
information
answer
withheld
would
from you?
be, well, I don't consider it withheld it, but.
What do you
in
consider it?
your terms of questioning, my answer would have to be yes.
Okay. When you said you found out about it from my filing of a complaint, were you consulted at that point in time as the former treasurer by either Mr. Stewart or by the current treasurer or by anybody else in the matter?
The information that I have is the fact that Brian informed me that you had filed a complaint with the commission. And
So my
that's-
question,
And that basically is
my
all I
question
know
was
at the
yes or
time.
no?
Mr. Hicks, he's answered
If I,
the question.
Madam Chair, if I
You're
ask a
not-
yes or no question, he's supposed to answer yes or no.
Well, as far as anybody else consulting, the information I got from Brian, the answer would be no.
So then how
Not
did you,
contacted by anybody else except Brian that you had filed a complaint.
and who is Ryan?
Brian, excuse me.
Brian, okay. So, but you were not, I'm just asking us, I'm trying to ask a simple question. Were you consulted for your opinion, your advice, or what should happen?
At that time, no.
You were just made aware that there was a
Yes.
complaint. Okay. As a treasurer, were you treasurer for any other campaigns?
I've run for office several times myself, and if I had to file reports, but other than that, no.
So the answer is yes, you were the treasurer for your own campaign.
Yes.
Okay. So when you were the treasurer for your own campaigns or Mr. Stewart's campaign, did you ever receive an invoice that you questioned?
No.
Never.
But most of my campaigns I financed myself. It was, village offices are not complicated. During his run for county commissioner, I filed reports and they were never ever questioned.
Did, so if you would look at page 168, or Chris, if you can put up 168. I guess you technically you should put up 164 to be technically accurate to the same document, but it's from two different letters. So page 164.
64 or 68.
64. They're the same document. They're just were with two different letters from the collection guy.
What's your question?
So this invoice, can you see what it's dated?
Yeah, 3/18 of 2020.
Now, were you aware of this invoice?
No, I've never seen it before, except
Have you?
today.
Okay, so the answer is no. That you became when did you ever become aware of this invoice? Just right now is the first time?
Yeah, really.
Okay, because I don't think this wasn't
Yes.
part of my complaint, so it would have been,
Okay, yes.
okay. And you would acknowledge this as Brian Stewart's home address
Yes.
on here. Do you know who Jeff Longstreth is?
No, I do not.
And you've never met with Jeff?
Never
Longstreth? Do
met
you know who
with him.
Megan Fitzmartin is?
No.
Okay. What, as a treasurer who's liable for the finance campaign reporting, who was a treasurer for your own campaigns,
Mhm.
but not big not like big,
Yeah.
regular kind of hometown campaigns.
Yeah, village
Okay.
campaigns.
Yeah,
are
like not
simple.
big money, not householder money and stuff like that coming into them. Did you, as a treasurer, if this would have happened in your own campaign, and let's assume that the services took place, just for sake of this discussion, I'm not asking you to admit that, I'm not asking anybody to admit it. But if you had received an invoice, a year and a half after a campaign finance report for activity, and then realized, let's assume you received, let's not even make it this invoice. You receive an invoice and you realize, oh shit, this was a valid invoice. I forgot about that.
Language, please.
Totally appropriate to say the word shit.
It's absolutely inappropriate.
You're just
Mr. Hicks.
wasting time.
I'm not,
wasting
no,
time.
actually, I'm not, Mr. Hicks. Please respect.
Why don't you have a trooper come in then? This is ridiculous. Quit interrupting me. Let me interrogate the witness. Okay,
Mr. Commission, for every disrespectful comment that happens moving forward, we will take a 2-minute pause.
okay, then we'll make the take a lot longer. That's very intelligent. So,
Honestly, can you just give it a break? I mean, I've about had it with the insults of the chair. They're inappropriate, they're unnecessary, they're disrespectful, and if you want to get to the bottom point, they're really starting to piss me off.
I'm sorry
So,
about
I
that.
mean,
Mr. Knight, please.
we're doing our best here, and your lack of decorum has hit the meter of way above.
Okay. All right. So assuming you had received an invoice a year and a half after a campaign was concluded and realized, oh, this was a legit invoice. As a treasurer, what would you think the proper process would be?
Well, once again, we're in the hypotheticals. And I probably would immediately try to ascertain whether the invoice was correct or not.
I
I
said
mean, 'cause
assuming the
we're,
invoice
you know,
was
once
correct.
again, we're after the fact, and that's awful hard to prove.
My
Something-
specific example was assuming you got an invoice a year and a half after a campaign and it was a legitimate invoice and you realized, oh, shoot, we just forgot. I used that word there that made her unhappy.
Well,
What?
you know, once again, it depends upon what you want to term legitimate. That's part of the issue before this commission hearing now is who is responsible for paying this invoice? And our
That was,
argument is,
that was not my question.
well, I already answered your question.
I don't
And
think
there's
you
really,
did.
you know, I don't need to go down this road forever. You know, once again, I have answered. If it was my campaign, the first thing I would do is start checking to see if it quote was a legitimate invoice.
But you were unable.
And if true that, and if it was true, then I would have to find out what I would have to do to correct the report. If I had to.
Gentlemen, please ask and answer questions directly.
So my point was, you're a treasurer, you've been a treasurer. My question was, if you receive a valid invoice a year and a half after the campaign, as a treasurer who is liable for the reporting, what do you think you are supposed to do?
Objection has to be-
My answer to that is I would investigate to make sure, and then I would have to probably consult with the commission, which they're able to answer questions about campaign financing stuff, what I needed to do.
I keep
Why
giving,
do you keep asking the same question and I try to answer that I would have to investigate myself.
I keep asking a different question than what
Oh,
you're
yeah.
answering. I asked the question, what if you had a valid invoice, not that it was not valid, you ascertained it was valid. As a treasurer, what are you supposed to do?
Well, then as I say, my answer to that was that until I actually knew for certain that it was a valid invoice, that's like almost, I get all these phishing invoices all the time. Oh, you owe this money, please respond. And you do, you get in trouble. So once again, I would have to personally investigate to ascertain it was a valid invoice.
And if you had concluded it was a valid invoice, as a treasurer, what would you do?
Well, I, once again,
Asked and answered.
being a treasurer, I have the
She's never answered.
Secretary of State I can consult. I can also consult the Ethics Commission about what course of action I should take.
Mr. Hicks, and for the gentleman, the kind gentleman, can you provide clarity on the end of your question, please? This has been asked and answered, asked and
My
answered.
question
please
has never been answered. My
Ask
question
it
was,
with
assuming a
clarity
valid
at the
invoice,
end.
what do you,
If the invoice is valid, what do you do on that point? That's what you're trying to ask. Just ask it.
I've asked it
directly.
and he keeps answering a different question about how he will investigate the invoice and find out whether it's valid. I keep saying,
Believe it or not, when people start cussing, elevating voice tones, people get nervous, they respond. So
do we need
just,
to take a 2-minute break so he can compose himself?
I don't need to
I
compose
don't think that
myself.
he's answered the same way, at least.
You keep answering your question the same way. So why do you keep
You haven't
asking?
answered the question. Let me ask you a different question. Are you aware of the concept of having to file an amended report?
I know that you can do that.
Have you ever been asked by a Board of Elections or the Secretary of State to file an amendment due to
No.
an error?
No,
Okay. Do you believe that if you found information that had not been included on a report, that you're obligated to file an amended report to include that information?
only if it turns out to be true.
I
Once
keep
again,
making my
You're
assumption.
doing a hypothetical once again. Our argument is that we really don't know anything at all about how we ever got an invoice for these ads.
I'm basically
And
asking you
having
questions
been
about
in the
your,
Radio business myself, I think it's outstanding.
I'm basically-
They charge for them, so.
I'm basically asking questions about your knowledge and experience as a treasurer and what your obligations
Well,
as a
my
treasurer
knowledge,
are.
once again, I answer the fact that if I knew that I had to file an amended report, I would have to consult someone to make sure I had to.
next question.
So that item page 164. The one I think it still is up on the screen, right? Okay, thank you. That invoice, you would maintain that you never saw any copy of that invoice from around 3/18, or have any personal knowledge that it was ever
No,
received?
I have no personal knowledge of that invoice.
Okay, and you were never consulted by Mr. Stewart when he became aware from my filings that you never consulted with Mr. Stewart, and
Well,
he never asked you for any
Well,
advice?
the answer to that would be yes and no, because he did say that he had responded to some of the information that was received.
So you were aware of it? Are you, I'm
You
sorry,
know,
you
once
were,
again, I have never seen this invoice until today.
okay. So I don't think I have any further questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions of respondent?
Good afternoon, Mr. Emery. Let me take you to exhibit, page 165. Can you just move it up just a little bit to? So this, page 165, that's a September 5th, 2021 letter that Brian Stewart signed. Is that correct? Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. He indicates in the first sentence, I was surprised to receive a letter from you demanding the Friends of Brian Stewart pay constant contact for alleged services, correct?
Yes.
And then the next paragraph says, I have no knowledge. Is that correct?
Hmm.
And then Brian Stewart signed it himself, correct?
Yes.
And this was about, give or take, 18 months after the 2020 primary, correct?
Yes.
And Brian Stewart had the ability, once he got the August 2021 letter, which is page 162, when Brian Stewart received that, did he or did he not have the ability to look at the campaign finance reports to see if he recognized that or if he could make heads or tails of that? He could do that, right?
Hmm. I mean,
Yes, sir.
yeah, in the report, we do have some in-kind contributions listed. Knew nothing about that.
I understand that, but my question's even simpler than that. When Brian Stewart received the August 2021 letter from Mr. Goldstein to his home, Brian Stewart, thank you, whoever did that, thank you, that letter, page 162. When Brian Stewart received that letter at his home, it was about 18 months or so after the March 2020 primary. Brian had the ability to look at the campaign finance reports to see if he could make heads or tails of it, correct?
Right.
He could do that, correct?
Yes.
He didn't need to consult you, correct?
Correct.
He could have consulted you, but he didn't need to, correct?
No, he did not.
Right. He could read the report himself, correct?
Yes.
It's very simple, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And again, just to put a bow on this, you never had any knowledge. Brian Stewart first received the letter in August 2021. He made the choice to address it himself,
Yes.
correct?
Exactly.
And he sent the letter in September 2021, addressing it, essentially indicating, letter speaks for itself, but essentially indicating, I don't have any knowledge of this. Send me proof, correct?
Yes.
And no proof was sent till 2 years later, correct?
Yes.
So when you filed your original campaign finance report, you had no idea.
That is correct.
All right. So in terms of filing any type of amendment or anything, there was never any need to file an amendment in your eyes because there was never any proof given, correct?
Correct.
All right. Thank you.
So he just asked you about that Brian could, and I believe was your testimony, that Brian didn't need to consult with you because he could read the prior campaign finance reports.
That
Correct?
would be correct.
So how would he know whether an invoice that had never been put on a campaign finance report was legitimate or not by reading the prior campaign finance reports?
Because it's not listed. See, once again, when I filed that report, it was true and accurate to the best of my ability because I knew nothing at all about this invoice that he's talking about. Because technically it didn't exist. And so how can we file it when we don't know about it?
Do you believe that a prudent candidate. If you look at page 162, you know, that he got this thing and replied on September 5th, 2021. That when your testimony is you didn't even know about this till my complaints, would not a prudent candidate have consulted with his treasurer when receiving this letter to ask the treasurer, did we miss something or did something accidentally not get put on our report?
Sustained calls for conjecture.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, am I supposed to answer that? Because I have no idea what
You don't need.
Mr. Stewart
Objection was
does.
sustained.
I'm sure he gets up and has coffee in the morning and brushes his teeth and comes up here and goes to work.
So that they, then
Other than that-
then I can, since, that's objected to and sustained. It is a fact, though, that upon receiving a dunning letter from a collection agent attorney, Mr. Stewart did not consult with his then treasurer
Well, if you
I ask you if you, let me finish my question, please. To ask you if there was maybe something we missed or something stuck in a folder somewhere that we forgot to put on the report. You were
Well,
never
if you look-
asked.
If you look at his response to the letter, it says, I'm surprised.
But
The
he-
reason we're surprised is because we didn't know about any of this.
Well, you didn't know about any of it until
Well,
now.
Well, that's exactly true, but he didn't either at the time.
So the bottom line is it's a truthful statement, yes or no, that when Brian Stewart was confronted with an invoice and a collection request, he did not bother to consult with his own treasurer at the time he received the request to identify if maybe we missed something or something wasn't included properly in one of the reports.
Well, since we didn't miss anything, the response to
further
that would be
questions.
no.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the commission members for the witness? Oh, okay, seeing none. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Are there any other witnesses?
No, you wouldn't be. So Emily Carloni, I'd like to recall.
Objection.
She wasn't excused, so
He had an opportunity for cross, direct.
There's
and
been
recall,
additional
and
testimony.
it was done. She left the stand. He already
He
had
would-
recross.
She was specifically not excused.
she was not excused, so I'm gonna allow it.
Commission, can I ask a housekeeping question? What is our time availability today? Our goal is to be done today, so how much time do we have?
Yep, we appreciate the question. There are no hard stops for the commission members today. We fully intend to resolve this matter.
I do have a hard stop.
I stand corrected. I was not aware of a 5 p.m. hard stop. Was that expressed last night, Mr. Knight? Was this?
Expressed last night until my wife expressed it. It's on the family.
Well, I might
Calendarized.
usurp and re-express. Let's try to get this done by 5.
So I actually went back and listened to your testimony last time, Ms. Carloni, and I was a little unclear. We just heard Mr. Embry testify that he was unaware of the constant content invoice until my complaints. And I thought when you testified last time that your testimony was that you weren't aware of it till my complaints. But I want to give you a chance to clarify, when did you become aware of the constant content invoice?
Through your complaint.
Okay, so I would like you to look at, it's going to be page 166. In there, but he can probably put it up there. It's easier. We're not going to go into the detail of it, so. Yeah, he's got it up there. And then he's usually pretty good at being able to zoom in awesomely. So are you familiar with this letter dated November 27th, 2023?
Not until today.
So do you recognize the address on this letter? Okay. So were you treasurer in November of 2023?
I was.
So did. But it would then be your testimony that you never, Mr. Stewart, never shared this with you.
I have not seen that until today.
Had you seen it? You testified previously that you did no investigating when you became aware of it from my complaints. Had you become aware of this, what is this, in some period of time, one of my complaints?
I would
My-
argue that I didn't say that I did zero investigation. I specifically said I didn't call radio stations specifically. But I did do research into the complaint. I did discuss it with my boss. I discussed it with Brian, who discussed it with an attorney. There were several discussions and research done surrounding it to come to the conclusion to not file an amendment.
And
To
there,
clarify.
but just to be clear, to your knowledge and to your personal involvement, none of that research involved calling Scott Schweitzer, calling David Goldstein, or calling any of the people that had submitted this information.
I didn't think that was reasonable, no.
Why would you not think that was reasonable?
I think my efforts were reasonable, so
And then what were those efforts?
the ones that I just said, discussions with people that are very versed in election law, consulting outside counsel and coming to that conclusion.
But not to any of the people that were actually requesting the money, did the work. Have you, other than the hearing last time, have you ever met Megan Fitzmartin?
You asked me that last time and no,
The
I did
answer is
not.
no. I just can't remember. I apologize. So let's flip back to page 165. You can probably put it up there. Okay, so this is the letter from September 5th, 2021. So when you became treasurer, did you inherit the treasurer camp files for this campaign? From Mr. Embry?
Physical files?
Physical or electronic? Like, was there a handoff? Here's the
No,
stuff.
just the online reports, but no.
Okay, so you don't have any of the records, or you were not provided any of the records previously. So you've never seen this either.
Not until the.
And I think I messed up the timeline a little bit on what I said, because this November 27, 2023 is later than I just implied. So I have down, there was, and these, I'll take, based on what you said that you didn't receive any files, there's the March 18th, 2020 constant content invoice addressed to Brian Stewart's home. You obviously have never seen that. We have nothing in evidence that it was actually received by Brian Stewart, to be fair. 2021, September 5th, 2021. The Stewart responds that was up on the screen. And I just want to frame this because on December 16th, 2021, there was the decision in the Alan Freeman case, 2020 G19. You became the treasurer in January of 2022. My first complaint was in March of 2022. My second complaint was in April of 2022 that have been consolidated. In November of 2023, there's another demand letter from David Goldstein. So to be clear, and I'm gonna pick up with that timeline, but up through that point, in response to my complaints that were in March and April of 2022, you did basically all the investigating was internal with Brian and legal counsel, not to the people that had been requesting money.
Be considered internal. She's not listed as the treasurer.
Okay, but I mean, internal to your team of your company, your bosses, you work for her.
Not the attorney. He's not
Okay,
part of our
okay.
team.
So then we're what, a year, more than a year forward, when you get the second demand letter that Brian Stewart received, that was not shared with you. The November 27th, 2023 demand letter.
I have not seen it until today. I don't know if Brian has ever seen it, so
Okay.
I don't know if
Okay.
it's
Okay.
not shared.
So until today, you've never seen that letter. And then I'm assuming that page 164, if you throw that up there, Chris, which is the constant content invoice dated 3/18/2020, that you have never, until today or these hearings, is the first time you've ever seen that invoice. I think today would be the first time you've ever seen that invoice.
Correct.
Okay, you haven't seen it before that. Okay, and then okay, so then I want to have you look at Exhibit M. I might ask you a question about it. You're probably not familiar with it, so you might need to look in the thing to be able to read it. So it says page 174 at the bottom. This is the decision from the Alan Freeman case. Have you ever seen this before? When you consulted with Don Bray on this matter, this decision was December 16th of 2021. My complaints were March and April of 2022, so it was after this decision. Did he raise any points about any responsibility that you might have as a treasurer to investigate invoices that were questioned? She's not in an attorney-client relationship with Don Bray. She already testified that the last time.
Didn't indicate she wasn't. Right. Exactly with Mr. Stewart, but not with her.
Right, understood. I mean, I don't think it's relevant either, but.
Can you ask the question again, please?
So a part of this, and I could point out the thing just to clarify, and then I'll restate the question. So a part of this that the commission rolled in December 16th of what year was this? 2021. It was that there's an obligation of the treasurer and the candidate to investigate questionable invoices in a more meaningful way than just talk about it amongst themselves. When you consulted with Don Bray, it would have been after this decision. Did he at any point in time express to you that you need to go investigate?
I want to clarify something. I was not a part of the phone call with Don Bray. I can't remember why I wasn't part of the phone call. My boss, Natalie Bauer, Brian, and Don Bray had a discussion. I had a debrief with Natalie afterwards.
So when I reviewed your testimony from last time, I would swear that you claimed that you had consulted with Don Bray and with Natalie Bauer.
I also.
I'm not, it's not like I'm saying you perjured yourself. I'm just saying, okay, so then I once again want to bring up to this commission that my attempt to subpoena Natalie Bauer is directly relevant to what advice was given to the campaign about reporting this. One of the alleged violations relates to receiving improper corporate contributions, which has a knowingly standard as part of the statutory definition of culpability. And so Natalie Bauer's testimony, and now she's just made it more relevant because she said that she wasn't the one who consulted on what to do in the face of the invoice, but it was Natalie Bauer and Don Bray who consulted on that. And then she was not a direct party, so anything she would say about it would be hearsay.
Go ahead, ask questions of the witness.
So you're not aware of any, did Natalie Bauer ever tell you? So I want to be clear. So you're saying Natalie Bauer and Don Bray, to your knowledge, had a call or calls talking about this that you were not part of?
With Brian, correct.
So Brian,
Believe
Natalie,
it's not on them.
Natalie and Don Bray had those calls. You were not part of them. And it was who briefed you on what was discussed in the calls?
I believe Natalie, Brian, and I had a call maybe the next day, but I can't remember exactly.
So it's possible that Don Bray told Natalie and Brian that you need to properly investigate this invoice consistent with the decision that had just been handed down 3 months earlier from the Election Commission. And they never conveyed that to you.
speculation, and
Yeah.
I'm not sure that properly characterizes the decision either, but that's neither here nor there, but certainly.
Would we like to go through the decision in detail?
I would.
So the point is, if there's any, I'd encourage the commission, I want to save time here. But it specifically talks about the obligation of a campaign to do a actual investigation of matters they receive. I believe you've immortalized that now in a, whatever you call it, advisory opinion. There's an obligation on the part of the campaign. So that was, and there's lots of stuff in here about it. Okay, and having to do with when somebody claimed to receive the invoice, et cetera. So, so just so I'm going to keep my mind straight. So Natalie, Don Bray, and Representative Stewart have a call. I think this is dead. I looked down and noticed the light wasn't on anymore. But
I apologize.
so that they had a call about this after my complaints, just to put the time frame down. And you were not part of that call. Why were you not part of the call? Were you on vacation or not
I
available?
don't recall. At the time, my kids were 8, 6, and 3, so if I had to guess, it would have something to do with them, but I can't say with any certainty.
So are you aware that I believe, and maybe somebody on the commission could correct me or clarify, that the treasurer has a high degree of responsibility for the accuracy of the reports. You're the one that signs off on the reports. Is that your understanding?
On reports that I'm responsible for, yes, I did not file the reports pertaining to when the invoice.
But you were the treasurer in November of 2023 when the alleged second Dunning letter was sent.
That I've never seen.
And you are aware that sometime a year plus before that November 2023, there was a call after my complaints, which were in March and April of 2022, right? March and April of 2022, that these calls took place in response to my complaint. Your testimony is that, as far as you know, nobody actually reached out to any of the vendors involved or other, apart from Mr. Stewart's September 5th, 2021 letter, but my complaints were later. In response to my complaints, there were these calls and nothing else. Is that a correct statement?
Yes.
Okay. Are you aware of the responsibility to file amended reports?
Particular cases, yes.
And would,
There.
in your, as a treasurer who works for a company that holds itself out as an expert, as a company, not an individual like Mr. Embry, doing campaign finance for people, and you having purported expertise in that, what do you believe you're supposed to do at the point in time that you would realize that there was a legitimate invoice?
If at the time that there was a legitimate invoice, I would, like you said, investigate that. If it's determined that it's legitimate, I would likely seek counsel on what to do.
From who?
The Secretary of State first, potentially legal counsel,
As we know, the Secretary
I
of
don't
State
have-
will not provide legal counsel, so you can,
not legal counsel, but counsel,
so,
advice.
but you would accept that that would potentially result in, apart from the seeking of counsel, that you would have to file an amended report to correct the improper report.
I mean, that's hypothetical, but yes.
You think it's hypothetical, or you think that's factual?
Well, we're not talking about a specific case, so yeah, it's a hypothetical question. Hypothetically, if I needed to amend a report, yes, I would.
So I'm gonna say a little different. Hypothetically, if you become aware of an expense that was legitimate, that was not properly reported, hypothetically, you're responsible to file an amended report.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so at this juncture, I never asked for, I mean, you're a party, so I never asked for segregation of witnesses during this whole thing. So at this juncture, do you believe the expenses were legitimate?
I still to this day, do not know how I could accurately amend the previous report.
So
There
let-
is an invoice from Strategic Media Placement to Constant Content that has been paid. In a scenario like this, my understanding is that the caucus contracted with Constant Content to produce a radio ad. And if that's the case, the caucus would pay that bill. It would be an in-kind. It obviously has not been paid because there was a collection. Scott Schweitzer, I believe, was who it was, correct? That was trying to collect the debt, so. it
So
hasn't
just to
been-
clarify, so we get it right in your answer. Scott Schweitzer was paid for doing the work by Constant Content, who then billed the Friends of Brian Stewart campaign that did not pay. So that's where who's trying to get money from who.
Well, I've never seen an invoice to Friends of Brian Stewart, though. I've only seen Strategic Media Placement to
Well,
Constant Content.
please look at page 164. You can put it up on the screen. Isn't that an
That's
invoice?
as of today.
This is ostensibly from March 18th of 2020 and resulted in the collection attempts.
That I
But that
have
in-
not seen until today,
Okay,
just to be clear. So I couldn't have previously amended a report for an invoice I'm seeing right now.
so you're, okay. At this juncture, I guess my question was, I'm not sure I heard your answer, so I want to be clear that I heard your answer. Do you believe at this point in time, there is a financial obligation of the campaign or a need to report an in-kind since the underlying invoice was paid by a third party?
I couldn't report an in-kind because there's nothing showing that they paid Constant Content. It may be an outstanding debt to the caucus. I don't know. I don't have that information.
This invoice is not to the caucus, so you keep talking about the caucus.
Well, this is an invoice that's been presented today, so I have not had a real chance to take a look at it, to be honest.
Well, but you saw the invoices, I'm gonna point out. I think it's exhibit F. Or no, yeah, F. So it would be page 54. So go forward, Chris, to page 56. So these invoices are not to the Brian Stewart campaign. I agree with you 100% on that, okay? But you've been aware of these invoices since basically my complaint, haven't you?
Correct.
Okay, and then you're aware from this that the testimony of Mr. Goldstein was that there were Dunning requests both in August of 2021 and in November of 2023, neither of which were you aware of as the campaign treasurer.
I
One
was
was
not.
before your time. Okay. And nobody along the way gave you any advice that you should investigate the invoices by calling the people that were requesting the money.
I mean, there were questions or conversations surrounding this invoice, Constant Content. My understanding during our internal investigation, as you called it, was that that was led by Jeff Longstreth. He was being charged. I don't know the specific charges, but that there wasn't anyone to call. And at the end of the day, that's who is seeking payment, according to you, from Friends of Brian Stewart. My understanding is that the caucus contracted Constant Content to do this work, so they would pay.
So you've
They
heard,
didn't. I'm not saying that they did.
so you've heard the radio ad, correct?
I have.
Okay. So the radio ad, what's the disclaimer at the end of the radio ad? Paid for by who?
Brian Stewart, Friends of Brian Stewart.
So why would Mr. Stewart do a voiceover for a radio ad saying paid for by Friends of Brian Stewart if the caucus was paying for it? Is there any legitimate reason you could see why he would do a voiceover that his own campaign was paying for it if the caucus was paying for it?
Objection. An extensive testimony regarding.
Ask your question again, because at one point he's got a valid point on his objection and then you kind of changed your question. So please re-ask your question.
Is there any reason in your mind that Brian Stewart would record a voiceover saying that the ad was paid for by Friends of Brian Stewart if the campaign believed that all their activity was being paid for by the Republican caucus?
Objection.
Then overrule that.
My understanding is that he was likely told to go record that by the caucus and that the caucus was contracting this work. That's my
Do
understanding.
you have any personal knowledge of what you just said?
Objection. Other than her testimony.
Yeah, I mean, she just answered your question.
Okay, so those, I want to direct you to look at Mr. Stewart's exhibits. So, and we're going to go to, I think it's exhibit 9, Chris, in here. I have it memorized enough. It's going to be much easier to look at it up there if he puts it up because they're all caterwauled in there and not in the right order. They're in the right order. This is not facing the right direction. So these are, I'm going to look at it on my computer. Is it okay if I sit down there so I can look at it at the same time? Because then I'll be done after this. So these invoices, I'm sorry, these not invoices, these mailers in exhibit 9. My computer cooperates, which it's not right now. I'll look up there. So that first one, this is one side of it. Go forward a page, Chris, to the second page. Oh, my computer's not showing me this. Oh, there we go.
I just want to place an objection to, I think well past probably the scope, not probably, we are well past the scope of cross-examination. I mean, this witness has already been.
You just had, earlier today, you were making somebody go through mailers. I just want to confirm. Here's what I want to confirm. I'll try to make it simple in terms of what I want to confirm. Your understanding. So these mailers, pages 1 and 2 are a mailer. So it's in your file, Chris, if you have it up there, it's page 90 and 91. Okay, if you go through these, that first one says caterwauled there, it's sideways, paid for the Ohio Republican Party. The second one says paid for the Ohio Republican Party. I'm going forward to page 92. You just keep rolling, Chris. I'm just gonna want to establish that they all say paid for Ohio Republican Party. Then we get to, and now I have a question related to this. Page 94, paid for by Ohio Republican Party. 95, paid for by Friends of Brian Stewart. 96, it's on 96. Paid for by Friends of Brian Stewart, then another paid, and then paid for by, on 98, paid for by Ohio Republican Party. And then 100 paid for by Ohio Republican Party. And then paid for by Ohio Republican Party on 102. And then paid for by the Ohio Republican Party on 104. And then paid for by the Ohio Republican Party on 106. We can keep going. Have you seen all those mailers? Have you seen any of them or all of them or? So you would acknowledge that in the middle of the stream of mailers that are sequentially numbered on mailer 6, I think it's 6, and it might be 7 also, it has a different disclaimer on it than the other mailers in the series. So this one's number 6, and this is the front side of number 6. And it says up there, it's page 96. It says paid for by Friends of Brian Stewart in the upper left-hand corner there. Do you see that? Okay, and then the back of that is on page 97. And then the next one is page 98. And that says paid for by Ohio Republican Party. Do you see that? So just for sake of discussion here, do you see what the postal indicia says in the upper right-hand corner of page 98, which we can stipulate it's the same on all the ones that say Ohio Republican Party?
Sure what I want.
The stamp area,
Oh,
what does it say? What's it say below that?
US postage paid Ohio.
Okay, so now let's go back to this one. Go back to page 96. What does that one say?
He sorted standard US postage paid Columbus, Ohio permit 6871.
So you would acknowledge, just as a factual statement, that in the sequence of mailers, mailer number 6, and that little part that's almost impossible to read down at the bottom, not only has a different disclaimer than any of the other mailers, but has a different postal code.
I don't know what sequence. I think you just need the sequence of how they're listed in his exhibit. Not
No, they have
necessarily
numbers, they have tracking numbers. So when Strategy and Media did mailers for people, I'm sorry, when Constant Content did mailers for people because Strategy and Media didn't do it, they were always sequentially numbered as they created the next one, which is quite logical. So the one that's number 6 is the one that has different disclaimer and different postal indicia, which if I were, I just want you to observe that that's a true statement. So as a treasurer, if you saw that, would you be like, well, there's two things different about this. Both the designation of who's paying for it, but also who's paying for the postage, which would imply it's different than.
like a little bit out of scope for typical treasurer duties to look at every piece of mail that goes out and compare the permit code on that. Like that's not something that's done.
Well, have you ever, I appreciate that. Have you ever filed a report where you had to report the expenses for a postal meter mark? Because they get uniquely billed. So that permit there, 6871, I think is the number, that would have billing associated with that permit that the treasurer would be reporting on a campaign finance report.
Assuming that's true. I mean, that's.
Okay. All right.
That's not evident.
Before now, did you ever, because of the claims in this case, did you ever go to the step, you said you didn't go to the people outside, but did you ever go to the step of doing the examination we just did on what were the disclaimers and postal marks on the items?
I did not.
Did you ever go to the HRCC to ask them about this particular postcard?
There were discussions surrounding that. My understanding was that the HRCC, by the time I was made aware of any of this, had dissolved. I don't know if that's the right word, but was no longer. So who am I calling to verify that?
Okay, so the point is that so any of the subsequent names of the same organization, the HRA or whatever it's called now, what's it called now, HRA? Okay, so are you aware that the caucus, basically every time there's a new speaker, goes through a name change, but is effectively just a continuation of the organization?
I'm kind of aware of that. I wouldn't say, I think in this case, it's a little bit different, but from my knowledge.
Okay, I just want to renew I don't know whether it's objection, a motion, a concern. That I wish to be able to call especially Ms. Cardelloni. I'm sorry, Ms. Bauer and Mr. Bray to specifically impeach this witness's testimony, which I have an inherent right to do. Because I'm not confident that she's being accurate as to what was said to her by her boss or by Mr. Bray. And normal legal would be that I can bring a witness in to impeach, because what she has done is she's made representations in her previous testimony, not so much today, but that she acted in reliance upon these conversations with Natalie Bauer and Don Bray. And that's kind of like saying, I have a letter from my lawyer that says what I did was okay. Once you do that, you say it's okay what I did because these are the people that said it was okay. I have the right to question them to impeach her testimony. And I've been denied that due process right. But I have no further questions for her.
or Lorraine. I assume you remember me? Okay. So in looking at, page 96, that mailer, do you know one way or another, it's permit 6871, do you know who holds that permit? Okay, could that be the Ohio Republican Party? All right. And then are you aware one way or another whether, Friends of Brian Stewart had a permit number? Okay, so you wouldn't dispute, if I told you that the campaign did not have a permit number, do you have any reason to disbelieve that? All right, and then you see where it says paid for by Friends of Brian Stewart on that mailer?
Yeah.
Are you familiar with the concept of a placeholder when you're drafting mailers and so forth? Are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
That sometimes language may be put on to a mailer that is later changed? Are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
All right. And then are you also familiar with when a candidate is endorsed by the Ohio Republican Party, that the Ohio Republican Party or whoever endorses them will get substantial reductions in the cost of mailers and so forth, the production and the mailing, as opposed to a campaign themselves?
Yeah.
So an easier way to say it is, if a campaign sends out a mailer, Friends of Brian Stewart, and that campaign is endorsed, it's financially a foolish decision because you could almost be paying double for that. Is that your understanding?
Yes.
All right. And then in terms of the radio ad, are you familiar with the concept of in the can? That you can record TV and radio ads that may or may not ever be used?
Yeah.
That it's common practice to do radio and TV ads for campaigns, but a lot of times they're not used in the actual campaign because they're expensive, correct?
Yeah.
All right. And then in terms of your investigation, we talked about that a lot, or you talked about that a lot with Mr. Hicks. Were you comfortable with that investigation that was done in terms of the invoice that the constant contact invoice for 13 grand-ish? And would you consider it a comprehensive investigation? In terms of the efforts that Brian Stewart made, Don Bray made, your boss and other people, that was a comprehensive investigation into the situation.
Yeah.
And that if you look at, and if you would bring it up, Chris, page 165. And in terms of Brian Stewart's September 5th letter that disputes that invoice, that 13-some thousand dollar invoice, do you think it was appropriate for Brian, and not only was it appropriate, but did he have the knowledge and the capability to investigate that himself in terms of reviewing previous campaign reports and so forth?
I would think that he had.
Okay. And really, it's certainly not to minimize the matter, but we're not talking about a complex situation. We're talking about getting an invoice from some mailers and comparing it to what was paid and not paid. It's not terribly complex, correct? Would you agree with that? Okay, all right. And the investigation that was done around that, you felt as though it was comprehensive and appropriate, correct?
Objection, asked and answered already.
That's all I have. Thank you.
So I don't know if you were paying attention when I asked Scott Schweitzer whether his employees were paid and whether he was a corporation.
I think he said yes, they're not.
Yes, they were paid, and yes, they were a corporation. Do you believe that, let's say that's in the can thing, that if a corporation makes an ad for somebody and pays a person for making the ad, is there a difference in what you have to report based on whether you use the ad vis-a-vis the production cost of the ad? Or is that always a reportable campaign expense, whether you use it or not? In particular, it would always be when somebody's paid for it, basically, but in particular, in a case of a corporation doing it, where they have paid employees that did the work. Is it your understanding, as a treasurer working for a company that does campaign treasury things, is their line of expertise, that when a corporation makes an ad for somebody, pays people to do it, that there's some distinction on whether it's reportable on a campaign finance report on whether that ad is subsequently used?
I think it would be reported.
whoever invoice was being asked to be paid by whoever the report is being filed for. There is somebody else that could technically pay for the production of an ad.
So do you believe that at this point on November 21, 2024, that Strategy and Media produced an ad?
Yes,
Do you believe that they paid an employee to produce that ad?
but assume, but I don't know.
Do you believe that they've represented production cost a little around $1,000?
It appears that-
Okay, now as a treasurer, knowing all that stuff, are yours your testimony that you don't feel like you have an obligation to report anything? Either as an in-kind or as a debt?
I just think in this particular case, it's a unique scenario where we don't know if that should have been paid by the caucus.
Well, what evidence do you have that it should have been paid by the caucus?
I don't have evidence either way, which is why I can't amend a report because
So,
what should I just pick and choose?
And-
I don't
okay,
I
I
don't
understand.
know. It wasn't paid by the
Okay.
caucus, obviously, because they're trying to collect a debt. So I'm not gonna report an in-kind, which would be
Illegal.
correct.
So, but I'm so confused when you say we didn't know. Brian Stewart narrated the disclaimer as paid for by Friends of Brian Stewart. So why would there be any confusion that you guys thought it was going to be paid for by the caucus?
Because I contracted that work through Constant
Then
Contact.
why did he record then the disclaimer should have been paid for by the House Republican caucus?
Objection. How many questions is he gonna ask her about what I thought or what I said? She has no personal knowledge of my knowledge.
I'm asking her questions that would relate to her understanding her obligations as a treasurer. I'm gonna withdraw that, whatever the question was, I'm gonna withdraw it because I want to get done. I want to pull up, Chris, it was that number in Brian's deck. Page 96. And I'm probably going to want you to go to page 98, if I can remember the numbers right, just two more pages. Yeah, stop there. So when you look at the permit on that, because he asked you a question about the permit numbers. When you look at that permit for the Ohio Republican Party, do you see a number? Do nonprofit political organizations, to your knowledge, have a permit number or not?
I don't know.
If I represented to you that they don't, and that's why you don't see a permit number on there, that they're handled a special case where they don't use a regular permit, would you have any reason to dispute that? So just for sake of discussion here, now go to 96, go back to I think it's 96. So notice that one has a permit. Okay, now go back to 98. What's the difference, other than not having a permit, do you notice any other difference between that? And he can switch back and forth for you.
Believe. Be
Now, what's different in that postal indicia? Other than a permit number?
I thought, what do you mean? Resorted?
No, that's a difference, but it's not the difference of.
Not
So if I represented to you that the reason why a political party like the ORP is different is because they are actually operating as a nonprofit and they don't use the same kind of mechanisms for buying bulk mail as a normal bulk mailer would, who would have a permit number. Would you have any reason to dispute that? So, okay. You said, last thing, you said you did a comprehensive investigation. Right? That was your testimony. So I'd like to direct you, it's page 179. It's exhibit M. And on page 179, I don't know if you could blow that up, Chris, just so it's, I'm gonna focus on the third and fourth bullet. Now, this is not related to the Brian Stewart campaign. This is the decision in the Freeman campaign. And that third bullet where it starts, that the commission members acknowledge testimony, da, 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 da. And the testimony confirmed his participation in the production of the advertisements. These were TV ads in the Freeman case. Witness confirmed his participation in production of the advertisement. They were aired on his behalf. But the commission members believe that the statements and testimony are disingenuous as it relates to the candidate's responsibility to properly investigate amounts owed by the campaign. And then there's another point below that. Commissioners are not persuaded, this is not you, Mr. Freeman or the treasurer of the committee, took sufficient action to properly investigate and identify outstanding amounts by the campaign committee. So you testified that you thought you did a comprehensive investigation, but that investigation did not involve calling Mr. Goldstein. It did not involve checking a radio station. It did not involve the FCC database. It did not involve contacting Strategy and Media, with which the campaign had another relationship to do town halls. But that to you would be a comprehensive investigation to leave out any attempt to contact any of those people?
Objection. Compare this situation to the Freeman situation is apples and oranges, to put it mildly. And
Only in the dollar amounts.
I think there's an important distinction too, that I was not the treasurer at the time this happened, nor did I see any of this during that time.
But per the testimony of you and Mr. Embry, you were the first treasurer that would have known about it. Because you were, the statement of both treasurers is that they didn't know about any of this until my complaints,
I'm just saying.
which when I did my complaints, you were the treasurer.
The distinction here, though, is that if I would be doing an investigation on something, or was investigating something that occurred many years ago, not in the moment. So if it were to come to me in 2020, it makes it a lot easier to call the specific vendors and verify an invoice. We're now several years after the fact. There's a caucus that's been dissolved, Constant Content owner, Jeff Longstreth is in legal trouble. Like, it's a little bit more of a unique scenario, I would say. So we're comparing it, but
Would you agree that it would also be convenient in that unique scenario for a candidate to just not pay his bill thinking he's going to get away with it because Jeff Longstreth is under federal indictment?
objection.
Sustained.
So I want to direct you to page 56 in my file. It is part of exhibit. You can throw it up on the screen. The screens work great, by the way. So exhibit F. So up at the top left of exhibit F, it has an address. What's that right below the address?
a phone number.
So you didn't think it was worthwhile to call that phone number and ask if this was a legit bill for Brian Stewart?
No, I did not think to call Strategic Media after the conversations that I had. I didn't think that would be relevant.
Now, when you leave here today, do you think that it would be good for you to get together with Mr. Schweitzer and Mr. Goldstein and try to figure this out as the treasurer who has liability for the reports directly?
Objection.
I'm asking.
I think it's a fair question.
Um, I don't know.
Potentially.
I'm not sure I know what you're asking. To get together with Strategic Media Placement?
Isn't it true? He likes to say, isn't it true? Okay, so I appreciate that. Okay, isn't it true that had you wanted to put this to bed and had you believed that an investigation would prove that the HRCC did it, it was this, that you could have done that? You've had 3 months, 8, 9, 10, you've had 3 months since the last hearing.
Could I though? Like Constant Content, who would I call there? Because this is a paid invoice to Strategic.
Megan Fitzmartin, who was tied to them, who you sat and watched testify. This number on here. My point is, my question is, why didn't, if you're so convinced that these expenses were not valid or were not to the campaign, why didn't you bring in witnesses to prove that? Somebody from the HRCC, somebody from that, why didn't you do any work between, even between the last hearing and this hearing?
Objection. She has no obligation to do that.
I believe she absolutely has an obligation under statute.
You're asking her to call. Why didn't she call witnesses? Why?
No.
It's completely inappropriate.
To investigate. And then with you gentlemen, to bring the witnesses that show that what you're saying is true. You're still to this day.
Their objection based on your question, because she's answered your questions. to this point. You may not be getting the answer you want.
No, I think I'm getting exactly the answer I want. So between 8:15 and now, that was the last hearing. Have you done anything to try to put together the story that confirms what you're alleging on paper? So, last thing I'm gonna ask is on these, go back to the his Stewart's exhibits, I think it's 94, the one. Okay, the one that maybe it's 95 or 6. It's the one that says, okay, prayed for by friends of Brian Stewart. There's been testimony or in an examination that potentially this was placeholders for 006. Have you ever seen a version of 006 that has different indicia and a different disclaimer on it? Okay, no further questions.
All right, seeing there are none, are there any questions of the commission members for the witness?
Has the complaint rested? Okay.
Well, he has the rest of his case.
We have an opportunity
Finish
as
with
a
the-
commission to ask questions to the witness on the stand.
I just had a question for Mr. Hicks, if I could, relating to the complaint.
Well, I'll stop you.
Am I subject to examination? I can be a witness.
Yeah, we,
Oh, okay, sorry.
okay, can we pause?
It was not excused.
Hey,
but-
let's take that 2-minute pause, friends. All right, so for the commission members who were the only people being asked if they have questions for the witness, do we have any questions to the witness before we dismiss her? Have the commission members, please, and thank you. No, okay, all right, good deal. Thank you for your testimony. All right, go ahead, Commissioner Kirschner.
No question.
Oh. Okay,
I'd like to recall Megan Fitzmartin.
This Fitzmartin is traveling and is unavailable. She contacted me late yesterday and let me know.
But you acknowledged that she was not excused, and I've repeatedly said my intent to recall her.
But I mean, all I can do is report that I reached out to her to let her know this was going on. And she got to me yesterday and indicated that she was traveling today and would be unavailable.
Okay, but you didn't inform me of that. Well, you didn't, why didn't you inform me of
It
that
was
before
late
now?
yesterday. I'm sorry I didn't, but I found out late yesterday.
I think that there's been testimony of other people that makes her recall when she was not excused essential to this case. There's
I'm
been
not
testimony from Mr. Schweitzer. There's been testimony, they've tried to testify from here about Megan Fitzmartin's rule. That no contract, all this kind of stuff. So there's been a lot of testimony. That's why I didn't want to excuse her.
I understand. I am merely telling you what I understand.
So what's your plan for that?
We need to continue the matter to come to another date to have her appear. That's
I mean, by the way, believe it or not, I'd like to get this over with, okay? But we need to have the witnesses, and when you guys only meet once or twice a month, and there's these big gaps, it makes it hard because you can't do just like get it nailed in 2 days type of thing. I think you guys should be compensated differently by the hour of meeting, so that that wouldn't be an issue. If I can't call her because she's not here, I'll call Brian Stewart.
all right.
Thank you.
All right.
Could we just do 2 minutes for?
Yeah, before they, yeah, make it 10, make it 10. 3:25.
You have to go through the turnstiles.
Okay.
Not kidding.
Oh, no.
But you said.
Yeah.
So how does it work then if I just examining him? But I want to recall her. Then theoretically, if I rest my case, then I can't recall her.
right. You can't rest, right? I understand.
Yeah, it would just be a continue.
I'm good with it. If there's some crazy English where they could do their case, but I could still call her later. Are they committed to call her again? Because that would enable me to question her again. You understand what I'm saying? If I knew that for sure that they were gonna call her, then that would enable me to call, cross-examine her again.
I don't know if they want to do that, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
So. What's your position then on if she's not here? This is new information here right now. I thought she was supposed to be here. I figured, I didn't see her here, but I figured you had her on the speed dial like you did before.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was hoping to have done, but unfortunately. Found out that not to be the case. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Now that I have a mandamus about Bray and Bauer, does the testimony about, at least for Bauer, Natalie Bauer, change your personal position on Natalie Bauer being a relevant witness, that she said she was not a direct party to the conversation?
It might, let's put it that way.
And I think on Bray, separate from my mandamus, on Bray, the HRCC would be the one that has privilege. So they would have to.
Mr. Stewart is a member,
No, he's not the organization. He's not
of
the
which he
employer.
is a member.
I don't think it's gonna stand up on it.
It may not.
Right, but you're making a claim of privilege for that. Nobody's asserted privilege except you,
Okay.
right? You can't do that. The client of the attorney has to assert the privilege of the clerk of courts.
Okay.
I don't know anything about the new organization, but I heard Adam Bird got in a much better position. Number 4, somebody, I don't know what that means, but somebody told me he's number 4. Do you object to, assuming this doesn't get done today, do you object to Natalie Bauer being called?
Absolutely.
So I don't know if he changed his opinion, but I just asked him, does it change your opinion? Because now the testimony is that that Bartoloni was not part of the conversation. And his answer was, I might.
Just ask me what you want.
I don't trust
You
you.
don't need 4 people.
I think you're a liar.
Conversation. Okay.
So that's why I would
I'm
ask,
talking to you, so.
that's
just
why I would
leave me
ask
alone.
somebody else.
Yeah, leave me alone.
Well, you're gonna be talking to me right after we get done.
More than I want to. So
Right.
I'm not gonna waste my time now.
Yeah, are you guys planning any witnesses for your case? Can you tell me who they are?
I told you.
Who?
Caraway and myself.
Well, he asked me. He's under the impression that I'm the only one that wanted to call Caraway. So he asked me yesterday I think you were copied on it, and I said, I'm not gonna be calling Caraway, so Caraway's not even here. Okay.
Yep. Sorry. Sorry.
I think out of curiosity.
By the way, Phil, he's under the impression that he's calling Caraway.
Okay.
Well, I thought when you asked me yesterday, was I gonna call Caraway, that I was the only one that brought.
Oh, no, I just,
Okay. Okay.
I just wanted to know the order in which you were doing it. You offered the fact that you may not call.
Yeah. And
I let him know that you had indicated that, but he hadn't, and so.
I know, I thought you said you see, it almost looked like it was, there was lots of concern about what is the basic in a flag or flag hanger or whatever. Make it-
I see things like it's a nurse. Like,
Yeah. Like what? Like a. I haven't stayed down here as long as I can remember. I don't want to go down here, but just call my husband, be like, you're on kids duty, I'm climbing into a bed here and getting a.
Just letting everyone know, I also spoke to building management. I brought a trash can. So
That's very nice.
it's the little things in life.
You know what?
Thanks. At least you didn't have to go to Home Depot.
Yeah. Yeah, luckily it was a little closer than that. They just had it locked in that back storage room there.
I go use your trash can, just in honor of you.
Oh, absolutely. I appreciate it, yeah. It wasn't in vain.
No, it is, Chris. You're getting more respect, appreciation, and gratitude today than I've seen for you in the entire time I've served on the commission. It's your day today.
I'll
For
be,
all
I'll be,
walks of
I'll be
life.
here signing autographs all day.
Yeah. Keep it up, whatever you're doing.
Right.
This is a dead puppy. Hold on, this one just went out. Maybe this one.
Switch it.
Yeah, this one just went dead too.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Chris.
This screen dead.
Nothing in the house has caught up with this technology, right? Like finance is not even close to this.
We started replacing microphones like a month ago.
Wow.
What's interesting is I still have it up. I mean, there's my screen and I can still see. Still recording and still counting. I don't know why that screen's out.
I think we'll survive it with the whole 5 of us here. Be all right, as long as it's streaming to the outside world. In which case, if you are streaming, it might make sense to have the people sitting in that chair if they want to be, but if you don't want to be, might be.
All right, let me put these in.
So when it goes Q&A, it's just flipping you guys' shoulders, which honestly, that might be a preference.
Yeah,
but-
really.
I believe that the orientation of this room would have worked better if your thing would have been this way. These pillars are very awkward to work around. Well, plus you got this weirdness of these video screens behind you at all times showing these huge pictures of other parts of the room. Or there was one time where he turned it off because they think he saw me looking up where it had you guys having lunch in the other room was up on one of the screens.
Thank you. The pictures. Has everybody been?
He was showing us eating lunch.
Yeah, were you sitting in that room over there? Yeah, so it was up briefly, and then I think Chris saw me look up at it and he turned it off.
No, I moved, I was trying to bump stuff around up here. The can't, or the,
I told him he could put it back up so we could figure out how much longer you're gonna be eating by monitoring you from afar.
It's great.
any other mics go dead, I've got one more other than.
And charging? Or who-
The charging bank's back there.
When do we get to go to these bad boys?
That's next.
Do some songs.
Is that what that?
Marathon.
Yeah. They must be off, Chris. These are all off. Mr. Stewart says mine.
Mine's on.
They're all off.
Yeah, maybe you just turned off.
I didn't.
Oh, it's on now. Darn it.
No. Mine was working.
Mine is not.
Whatever cold you have. When I was a kid, I was always a sickly kid at school with colds. And I could juice myself enough with Dayquil and Chlorseidin to go to about lunchtime. And then after that, it's not just start
Yeah, this.
blowing, and I got a pretty good snot producer.
Of course, see.
Huh? What?
Yourself. with
Yeah, I got with Jack Chlorseidin and Dayquil. But I couldn't bring it to school. They wouldn't let me have it at school, right? You can't, in grade school, have pills and
Yeah.
bottles of alcoholic things. But you're doing good at holding up. At school, I remember that era. Right after lunch, not just start, I'd bring like 3 handkerchiefs with me.
I don't know what this is. They said I was fine, but it doesn't seem like, I think there might be some,
It's not COVID, is it?
what?
It's not COVID, is it?
I don't, who knows,
No.
I never had COVID, or I never knew I had it, which I attributed to having so many colds when I was a kid. Like maybe somehow I got some, immune.
Super.
Yeah, because of being so sickly cold-wise. I wasn't sickly any otherwise, because of colds. I would get colds like 3 times a year that were terrible. But my mom would never let me stay home from school, so I guess technically I was infecting everybody else.
Yeah.
But in that era, I think that was the way it went. You went to school, put another handkerchief in your pocket.
Right.
Then people today tell me how the whole concept of a handkerchief is disgusting.
The classroom, what?
I said, then people tell me today how the whole concept of a handkerchief is disgusting.
Like putting a mask in your pocket.
Well, it's not.
All right, well, I think we are back at it. Ah, what is,
It
wasn't me.
He's on the.
Why are these people the way we are?
He's like,
Can we get a chance?
yeah.
Back out. He wasn't. I was on time, right?
She's gonna stick with.
You back? Did you get an extension from your wife?
The screen. If you look, so this. Yeah.
That's free, what?
Okay, so
Oh, mine is.
my screen is still showing you
They're
this.
just, they're like,
The,
Are you worried that it's not broadcasting? Is that what the?
that was kind of the worry if because this is the home screen
oh.
and I don't wanna. Still showing.
Does somebody have a laptop where they could just try on their own to go to it to see what it's?
I'll try on my phone for a second, so I've
I
got.
don't have Teams on my phone and I don't really want to. Do you live stream it on?
Okay, so it's just maybe the screen. So. Okay.
It should too.
It's not recess.
Fell asleep.
Yours is back on. You just.
Okay.
That's what I just did. They're not dead. Just reset it on the bottom. That's what I did.
Thank you.
Press it and it comes right back.
Thank you.
Very good. Maybe it goes off. It preserves it.
Off for.
Yeah. Yes. It probably cuts off.
Sweet.
Point to
It's,
preserve
it's
it.
called self-preservation. Okay, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're home.
Thank you.
Hey, I think your Teams is still.
So that's why it's on the screen's low and that one's showing that it's blank. I'm like, it's my computer showing, so I'm like, I don't know what to do.
But you're good now?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're back. We're back. If you are having issues with your microphone underneath, you can reset it. You need to go ahead and do that now. All right,
Push it one time and it'll come back.
Peter, I don't see lunging for the opportunity to reset your mic.
He already did it.
Okay, so he's first. Okay, all right. Proceed, please. Thanks. Yes, you sworn.
Turn your microphone on again. Looks like the lights are. All right, thank you, Representative Stewart. In the 2020 primary, Bobby Mitchell talked about interviewing with Larry Householder and or Jeff Longstreth, I can't remember what he said, to be a team Householder candidate. He didn't say those words, but it's a very common way that people express it. Did you have an interview with Larry Householder or Jeff Longstreth relating being a Larry Householder endorsed candidate in 2020, in the 2020 primary?
I met with the Speaker of the House when I announced that I was a candidate. Yes.
Okay, and were you aware that other people like Bobby Mitchell were also interviewing to be a endorsed candidate by the Speaker?
No.
At the time of that interview or that discussion or whatever it was, were you you were not an incumbent representative at that time?
No.
Correct? Okay, so the 2020 primary and your subsequent election and the general election was your first election to the House?
Yes.
Okay. So so you would describe yourself, at least in that area, you might not, I understand you were not as connected with the householder operation as some other candidates, but you were a team householder endorsed candidate.
I wouldn't describe it as a team householder candidate.
How would you describe it?
I was running for state representative. I was told that the Speaker was working to find candidates other than myself to support in that race. Householder and his operation declined to work with me or endorse me or have anything to do with me until I was winning the race. And then they decided to endorse me after the fact.
What do you mean by winning the race? Was there like some sort of staggered voting or something?
No, I mean, I was well ahead in the polls. I had the largest number of endorsements from the county parties, from elected officials across the district. Every legitimate candidate had decided not to run against me. And so we were in a good position to win the race.
So I'm going to direct Chris to put up part of Exhibit L in my set. And I'll give him a page number in a second. So page, let's go to 171. I'm not going to want to look specifically at any of these, just as a flavor. And probably let's look at 173. I'm sorry. Oh, this is sorry, Director. Good. So are you familiar with this mailer?
I've seen it as part of your
They have it
exhibits.
up on the screen, by the way, so.
I'm looking at it.
Okay, but you were not aware of it in the campaign?
One of these two individuals might have posted on Facebook. I can't recall, but I mean, I was aware that there were ads that were sent by a 501c super PAC that I was not involved with.
And that would be the Growth and Opportunity PAC?
That's what it says.
Working in.
You want the handheld, you want the Elvis version? Now, uniquely, I just want to point out mine has not gone out during this whole.
There's a dead battery.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
I apologize if I already asked this question, but I lost my train of thought there. So that PAC that you referred to would be the Growth and Opportunity PAC, correct?
If that's what it says on the mailer, then that's the PAC that sent it, yes.
So, were you aware that presumably after you were winning and got endorsed by the speaker, that there was a significant number of mail like these pieces going out in your district? Basically, I wouldn't even say supporting you, demonizing the people that were running against you.
Are you at, I don't know if I understand the question.
Were you aware during the 2020 primary that there were a lot of mail pieces like this coming out from this Growth and Opportunity PAC that were specifically demonizing your opponents?
I would disagree that the,
I don't think any of these questions really are relevant to the issues before the commission.
Understood. Proceed.
I would disagree. That-
You're not.
Mine's in good shape, I think.
I would disagree with the characterization of there being a lot of these mailers. I was aware of the two that you've included as exhibits.
At this point in time, are you aware that Growth and Opportunity PAC was associated with the speaker and specifically these kind of mailers with respect to candidates that were not endorsed by the speaker? And I'm going to move on from this.
I don't think I could say that I was aware this is associated with the speaker. I know there's been testimony today that maybe Jeff Longstreth was involved with this super PAC.
So are you legitimately sitting there today after federal cases and Larry Householder in prison saying you don't know whether Growth and Opportunity PAC was associated with Larry Householder?
I followed that trial probably closer than anybody, and I'm going to be specific in my words. Generation Now was at issue in that trial. I have no reason to doubt that this was in some way connected to the speaker's orbit. I don't know this particular PAC, who is the responsible party. I don't know who is involved in sending out mail for them.
So your testimony today is that you played no role and had no knowledge of these mailers for this effort.
Correct.
Okay. So I want to go back to something that was when I remember on 8/15, I testified and you cross-examined me. Do you remember that?
I was here for the hearing.
Okay, so Exhibit I, which I think is page 86 in my set.
I have it in front of me.
Okay. So when you cross-examined me, and I don't know if the commissioner members remember this, but you pointed out the bottom line on page 86. What is that line? The bottom expenditure.
Are you asking me to read it?
Or just say what it is. I just want to confirm I'm just doing it to confirm you're looking at the same thing.
I'm on page 86. The last line is Old Trail Printing, $676.40 for campaign literature.
Do you remember when you said to me, quote, if in my testimony, I testified that that is paying for exactly the literature you say we did not pay for, do you have any evidence that would refute that? Do you remember asking me that question?
I don't, but I'll trust your recollection of the transcript.
Okay, so my recollection of that, because I checked it, not the transcript, but the hearing, is that then I answered that it couldn't be this expense because of the date of it. What's the date of that expense?
It says we paid it on October 31st, 2019.
Okay, so let's do this. Let's go and Chris could put them up on the screen to make it just easier. His exhibits, the mailer section, which is exhibit 9, and his exhibits. So here's what I want to do, and I want to save us a little time. But I went through all these and I observed that they all say, like, see this one, Mr. Stewart, where it says your Ohio Republican Party endorsed candidate? You see that?
Yes.
Okay. And go forward one, Chris. Let's see. I just want to highlight some things and I'll ask, keep going. I'll tell you to stop. Stop. See, it says, that one says Ohio Republican Party endorsed candidate.
I do.
Okay, let's kind of flip through them and see if we see that on every one. Okay, keep going, because they're one side, get this, one side is the male side, so that it's not on both sides. So this one, you see where it says Ohio Republican Party endorsed candidate?
I do.
Okay, see, this one says Ohio Republican Party. They changed the logo, but Ohio Republican Party endorsed candidate. He didn't answer. I don't know. You seeing this, right?
I'm watching, yeah. You didn't give me.
Okay, but you see every one of these, if I go back, go to the next page, Chris. Ohio Republican Party endorsed candidate.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, so you'd agree that so far, everyone we've seen has had Ohio Republican Party endorsed candidate on it, right?
I don't know where you started, but I've affirmed where you are pointing to Ohio Republican Party and I am reading the same thing.
Well, this is your business, right? So this is what you produce, not what I produce.
I'm following what you're just choosing to show. I'm saying there's other pieces of mail in here that are lit pieces, and those would have been paid for probably through Old Trail Printing.
Well, can you point to one of the pieces that you would claim in here was paid for by Old Trail Printing?
I'm not allowed to shuffle through exhibits and show you exhibits. It's not how this works.
I think I can ask you that. Can you point to anything in your exhibit that you believe is the Old Trail Printing? You're the one that made it relevant by telling me, quote, if in my testimony, I testified that is paying for exactly the literature that you say we did not pay for. Do you have any evidence that would refute that? My physical microphone's running out.
Actually, I don't think it is a proper question.
Go ahead.
What is the question?
What in this pack of materials do you think is the Old Trail Printing material from 10/31/2019? If it would please the witness to save us time, I'll make an observation, Mr. Stewart, is that every one of these cards either says
The document in respondents exhibits, there is an additional piece of walk literature that I believe would have been printed early on. Been paid through Old Trail Printing.
I have no such exhibit. Can you please inform us where that is in your exhibits?
Zero 030 my packet. I don't know what that corresponds to, once it's your base stamped.
If you look in there, Chris, and yours. 0030. Okay, 32. 30. So I don't know what page number that is in mine. Is that a PDF? I'll try to find it for you, Chris.
This is.
It's page 119 in his. I had that thing happen, just close the PDF and reopen it. Then I'm like, oh,
I let him use the flash drive that had it.
oh, then if it does that, close the PDF and reopen it. I couldn't figure out why the screen went blank.
They're 40,000.
So that's the piece that you're maintaining was,
What are we looking at?
the page you referred to, page 30.
Are you pulling it up here?
Chris is the,
Phil's got the flash drive.
somebody's got the. What'd I say? 119, page 119. You can go right up to the top, Phil. There's where it says 8 right now, just type in 119 up there.
You're talking about the respondents, right?
Yeah, you're in the right set. Page 119. You're there right now, page 119. I get, so that's the piece that you're maintaining was done by Old Trail Printing.
I'm saying that looks like the walk literature piece that we used early in the campaign. And I believe that the walk piece we used early in the campaign is what we were paying for through Old Terrell Printing.
One thing I noticed, other than potentially this piece, because I appreciate you locating one, that every other piece in this either has endorsed by the Ohio Republican Party or it has references to COVID. You would agree that in October of 2019, even October 31st, 2019, the date on there, that you were neither endorsed by the Ohio Republican Party, nor was there COVID. COVID hadn't happened yet. Would you agree with that statement?
Yes.
Okay, so when you question me, when you know that my complaint had to do with mailers, not walk literature. My whole complaint part was about mailers. Was it appropriate as an officer of the court for you to put forward a false narrative that some walk piece from 2019 might have been the mailers that I was referring to?
Mr. Hicks, we've maintained throughout this case that understanding what your complaint is actually about has been pretty difficult for a very long time. I've not fully understood exactly. I mean, your case has changed every day that we come here for a hearing. So the question was, have we paid for literature? I indicated that we have paid for literature.
In October 2019, and that was that walk piece. You're saying potentially, you're not sure that that's the piece. I can't read the disclaimer at the bottom of that because it's blurry. Can you read the disclaimer at the bottom of that?
Not from here.
I've zoomed it up big time on my screen and I still can't, I don't think it's readable. It's not a clear enough scan.
Okay.
Could you produce that piece, the original, so we could see the disclaimer? Not now, I'm just saying in the future, could you produce
I've
it?
produced everything that we're looking at here in the original PDF format. So if you didn't print it in a way that you can read,
This is your
admittedly,
exhibit.
that's a you problem.
Mr. Stewart, this is your exhibit set, not mine. So how could it be, did I come and put your exhibit set together for you?
Mr. Hicks, we produce documents to you in native PDF format. If you didn't choose to print them in a way that you can read, that's your issue.
All right, and then the commission, you're working off of his exhibits. Here's your exhibit set. Can you read it in the original exhibits that you handed out to all of us? I just think I'd be interested in what the actual disclaimer is in there. So I guess the answer to the question is that you can produce a version of this, and you're claiming I already have it, where the PDF would be readable to be able to read what that disclaimer is, because I can't read it in this.
Correct.
Okay, so I just want to look at the original version you handed out to us to see if I can read it. Yeah, I can't read it on there. Okay. So let me go back. Let me take you back to exhibit A. So page 2 in my exhibits. Yep, okay. And so you said that my complaint has changed every time we've had a hearing, I think is what you said?
I think your theory of the case has changed throughout this case, yes.
What does that mean, theory of the case?
I mean,
Of questions are just not relevant to the issues before.
His response, I'm just asking him to clarify his
I
response.
understand he opened the door.
what's the question?
What does theory of the case mean to you?
I mean that your original complaint alleges that the committee filed a false report, that we were aware of expenditures at the time we filed the report, but ignored them and filed a false report. We have indicated throughout this case and through now, multiple days of testimony, that the committee was completely unaware of any claim for any payment at the time the 2020 reports were filed. So now your complaint has morphed into, well, yeah, you filed a correct report in 2020, but you should have amended it later because I want you to. That's how your complaint has changed.
I don't believe that I filed any different report other than the one in March and April. And so in Exhibit A, if we go to Exhibit A, page 4. It's way different. Okay, so Exhibit A, page 4, itemized certain specific statutes were violated in terms of filing a complete and accurate statement. I don't believe, can you point out in here where I said ever that you knowingly filed a inaccurate statement?
Mr. Hicks, I will happily stipulate that your complaint that you filed says what you filed.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the second complaint I filed. Well, let's be clear on that. So failure to file a complete and accurate statement. If you want to zoom it in, if you want to try, it says, I believe Brian Stewart has violated the following: failure to file a complete and accurate statement, failure to keep a strict account of all contributions, and acceptance of direct corporate contributions. Would you agree that's what it says?
I will again say that I can stipulate that your complaint that you wrote says what you wrote.
So what has changed in my allegations or my theory of the case?
Mr. Hicks, I just explained it.
So I've just made an absolute black and white statement in my affidavit that you failed to do those things. I don't think we're here having a hearing to try to understand how that happened. I would have hoped that you would have investigated it and resolved it so we wouldn't have to have a hearing. But you believe my theory of the case has changed. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
Did we meet about this complaint personally?
Yeah.
And do you remember what my theory of the case was when we met?
No,
Do you remember where we met?
a restaurant around here.
Do you remember my pleading with you to just fix the report? So that then we could forestall having a hearing?
At the time, we were engaged in settlement discussions, which are not discoverable evidence, but so I'm not going to discuss
I don't think I ever made a document that says
I'm not
settlement.
going to discuss private settlement negotiations on the stand.
So you won't discuss the conversation that we had in a Starbucks?
Objection.
No,
So I didn't realize, but if they are settlement discussions, it's not admissible evidence.
Executive Director, are we allowed to submit a settlement? Is that part of the commission rules?
Submit one, yes, but the negotiation part is not necessarily relevant to what's going on here.
Well, I don't believe that in my recollection of that meeting, there was ever anything of a settlement agreement. It was more, why don't you just fix your report and take your lumps?
it's not my recollection.
Do you have a different recollection of the meeting?
So. Okay, so. I want you to go look at page. Gonna be exhibit K, it's gonna be towards the back, but I'll give Chris the exact page number or Mr. Richter the exact page number. Page 164.
I'm there.
And he's got it up on the screen, I believe also. When is the first time you saw this document?
The 164?
Yeah.
The whatever date I would have received the original Goldstein letter.
Okay. Do you know Jeff Longstreth?
Yes,
Have you ever met with Jeff Longstreth?
yes.
Is Jeff Longstreth, maybe it don't work anymore, but is Jeff Longstreth's number on your iPhone or Android phone?
I doubt it. I probably deleted that one.
But it was.
Sure.
What's your relationship with Jeff Longstreth?
Currently,
That's a good question for you to ask. During this campaign cycle of the 2020 campaign, what was your relationship with Mr. Longstreth?
I met with Jeff Longstreth. I guess it probably would have been March of 2019. I think everybody who ran for the Ohio House of Representatives in 2020 as a Republican would have met with Jeff Longstreth. It was understood that if you were looking to run for these Ohio House of Representatives, you needed to talk to people involved in the House, and Jeff was kind of the right-hand man for the sitting speaker at the time.
And what would be the purpose for talking with Jeff Longstreth?
Introduce myself, let him know I was looking to run, just getting to know you. Here's why I'm a good candidate, and mostly just it's just basic etiquette if you're going to run for the legislature that you meet the leadership and folks that are in the building to kind of let them know who you are.
Well, Jeff Longstreth was the head of a company, right? Constant Content.
He was, I don't know, again, I don't know what their organization or what their org chart looked like, but it was understood that he was leading the legislative campaign fund for the Ohio House Republican Caucus.
Okay, so when so your meeting with Jeff Longstreth, your relationship had to do with, I guess, originally getting the nod from the speaker.
I wouldn't put it that way.
So then help phrase what it was then.
Exactly what I said previously, introducing myself, giving people the courtesy to let them know I was going to run so that they would know about me when I decided to run.
So we heard that Mr. Mitchell talk earlier, and I've heard many candidates talk about the pilgrimage to meet with Householder or Longstreth to get the nod of the speaker in order to get the largesse of the HRCC or what have you, and get that endorsement. You're saying that that was not the purpose of your meeting with them?
Objection relevance.
Where are you going here with this? Only as it relates to the campaign.
He's made,
consider
they've
the
made
campaign
claims
finance
that,
expenditures.
they've made claims that maybe it was confusion with the HRCC.
Then why don't you get to that then, instead of going around all of the, I don't know if I want to say introductory stuff, but I mean, he already indicated you reach out to
I get you. I'll
Leadership,
I'll retract whatever
invoices,
question I was
et
asking.
cetera. And let's get to the campaign finance related elements of this.
So you got this invoice in August, late August, according to Mr. Goldstein's testimony. You obviously got it because you sent a reply to it. Did you speak with Mr. Longstreth about it?
No,
Why not?
he was indicted for federal bribery, racketeering, and money laundering charges.
So you had at that, okay, so that was the reason you didn't ask him about the invoice?
I had spent the first 7 months of 2021 being the most vocal Jeff Longstreth critic in the Ohio House of Representatives. We did not have any kind of a relationship that I had any interest in maintaining.
Would you, from your experience and your harsh criticism, describe that Constant Content was a front company for First Energy money?
Objection. Irrelevant.
I have no,
It's going to be directly relevant on who actually paid the invoices. Remember, the invoices from Strategy and Media were paid. Where'd that money come from?
you're asking me where.
I'm clarifying for them because there was a somewhat of a muted objection.
I'm sorry, is there a question for me?
The question is, let me just clarify where we're at. That you didn't reach out to Jeff Longstreth. And then I asked you, were you aware, you mentioned your harsh criticism of Jeff Longstreth, so you made it relevant that you're a critic of his. Would you at this point describe that Constant Content was a front company for First Energy money as part of the household organization?
Objection.
I have no,
Let him answer.
I have no knowledge of the complicated chart between First Energy, Constant Contact, Jeff Longstreth, Household. I know what I read in the paper. That's it.
But you don't know any more than that from being a state rep. That was instrumental to your own description to me at Starbucks and here, I think a little bit, instrumental in the removal of Larry Householder from the House.
I mean, I can explain what my understanding is, but I'm trying to stick to your questions. I mean, when I received this letter, I had no reason to believe that it was a legitimate demand for payment, and that's why I objected to paying it, and that's why I asked for clarification about how this was a valid debt.
Did you, is it true that you never informed Mr. Embry of this, your treasurer, of receiving this letter at the end of August that you responded to beginning of September?
I have no recollection of the timeline in which I would have discussed this payment demand with Mr. Embry. At some point, I agree with his testimony that I did, but I don't
believe he
think it
testified
was.
that.
Well, I recall at some point making him aware that there had been a demand that we believed was bogus and that we were disputing it.
But
I don't recall.
But I
when.
believe his actual testimony, I'd be interested if you want to dispute this, was that until my complaint, he was not aware, and even then, he did not consult with you. You just sent him a copy of my complaints. That was.
In the answer I just gave, I didn't indicate the timeline. I said, I can't remember the timeline. My testimony is at some point, I can't recall if it's after your complaint, before your complaint.
So, but the
after
key
this-
point is.
Can I finish answering the question, please? I don't recall this specific moment that I made Mr. Embry aware that Jeff Longstreth's company had made a belated demand for payment a year and a half after the election.
Well, I just want to place an objection. I don't know that Mr. Hicks properly characterized Mr. Embry's testimony. I actually remember, I think Mr. Embry did indicate he may have talked to Brian at some point about it.
Well, we can go back and roll the tape, okay? Or we can bring him back up.
I don't know how it's important, but
Yeah,
I mean,
I mean, that's
I'll
irrelevant.
try to.
Well, because I think that the point is, this commission needs to make a decision on culpability in this. If you withheld information from your treasurer, that would be a reason why the treasurer was unable to file a correct report. In the testimony so far of your treasurer at the time of receiving this notice was that yes or no, I asked him, and it took a long time to get there, but that yes, you withheld this from him.
That was not his testimony. His testimony was, I did not send it to him. That's very different from saying I withheld it from
I
him.
beg to differ, but I'll
Okay.
move on.
The issue was,
So, okay, I want you to look at your exhibits again of your pieces, so you could flip up his materials again. So go back to, it's gonna be like around 94 or something like that now. Okay, so go to page. So you heard me go through that soliloquy with Ms. Carloni on the numbering of the pieces, and that there's one in the middle that has a different disclaimer and a different indicia on it. You heard that, you were right?
I've been sitting here.
Okay. So let's go up to, keep going forward, Chris. I'll tell you when to stop. Go back one page, stop, go back one, it'll be 2 pages now. Okay, so this is the piece in question where it says paid for by Friends of Brian Stewart, and it has a totally different mail indicia on it for bulk mailing. Okay, you would agree that that's what this piece says, right?
I agree that what we're looking at says what it says. An important part of this that you have left out for now, the entirety of this case is, all we're looking at in these exhibits are drafts that I was sent by email. That's all I have to produce is drafts. I have no record of what the final version of any literature piece that was sent out for this campaign looks like, because that's not how it works. It doesn't come to my house. So what I've produced to you are just whatever draft I was sent to review prior to it being sent. And so these are not the final versions in many cases of what the actual lit pieces were. These are simply PDF drafts.
So you would agree you produced these documents. You just testified that they were drafts.
Yes.
Who provided them to you and how did you receive them?
Megan Fitzmartin emailed them to me.
And did Megan Fitzmartin, it's been her testimony previously, she's not here today, that nothing ever happened without the candidate approving what went out. Did she ask you for approval on mailers that went out?
I wouldn't go, I think that's stating a bit more than it was. I think it was more, hey, we're gonna send this unless you have a enormous objection.
Okay. So that's something else that she can be asked about. How that worked. In the Alan Freeman case, he produced a huge amount of emails of his emails back and forth with Megan Fitzmartin approving literature pieces. Now it's going back in time. You didn't produce any emails between you and Megan Fitzmartin and Discovery, despite it being part of the Discovery request. Do you not have any emails from Megan Fitzmartin?
I recall we filed objections to the scope of your discovery and produced what we produced.
So do you have emails from back and forth with Megan Fitzmartin?
I'm sure somewhere we do, just with these PDFs attached, yeah.
Okay, would potentially those emails show yes or no, whether she asked an email for your approval on a given piece and whether you gave it or not? That's what the Alan Freeman case showed, that she was relentless about asking for approval in a reply email that it was approved.
Objection in terms of any analogy to the Alan Freeman case, obviously is not relevant to this proceeding.
It's the analogy of how Megan Fitzmartin comported herself, and I can question her later, is relevant to this case.
Yeah,
She's very systematic in the way she did things across 3 cases now.
Yeah, I think the mechanics of it were, the draft comes, we would either say, hey, change X, change Y, but otherwise approved, or change Y, change Z, but otherwise approved. We got a chance as candidates to see what went out before it went out. If you want to call that approval, that's approval.
So would you be able to, at this point in time, potentially produce an email showing how you responded to this specific mailer?
Action relevance.
I don't know.
Okay. Let's assume that for a second you could find that email and it showed that you approved the mailer, would then you admit that this should have been reported on your campaign finance reporting?
This piece would have been amended to say paid for by Ohio Republican Party. There was no mail sent by Friends of Brian Stewart with that indicia. There would be absolutely no reason to do that, would have cost twice as much. The entire point of being endorsed, which since you bring up Alan Freeman every, 6 seconds, Alan Freeman was not endorsed by the Ohio Republican Party. Therefore, every single piece from his campaign was actually sent by his campaign. I was endorsed by the Ohio Republican Party, and so every single piece of mail sent about my candidacy was sent by the Ohio Republican Party. And so, yes, it is typical when you get drafts of mailers that there are little things that are just placeholders and are wrong. They'll start, there's another mailer in this packet that says Citizens for Stewart. Well, that's clearly wrong. That clearly didn't go out under that name. It's routine when vendors are making mailers, they just throw in sort of a placeholder and then you correct it or they go find it and you make sure it's correct before it goes out. But there would be, Friends of Brian Stewart did not send mail because Friends of Brian Stewart would have had to pay double what the ORP did.
So so when Megan Fitzmartin, her practice and routine, my personal experience is that a lot of times it's those last changes, change 3, that end up really screwing something up where you think you don't need to check it. And it seemed like from her testimony to me that she was very meticulous. This is the final, good to go. Was that not your experience working with her? That you would send back something saying change 3 and 4 and then just go? Without, I don't need to see a final, just go.
Certainly, yeah. By the end of 2020, I mean, it was an all-mail election. It's the only one we've ever had in the state of Ohio. I mean, there were mail pieces going out every day. It was basically like, here's what we're sending out. Approved 5 minutes later and on it went. Or, hey, change the disclaimer, but otherwise approved. That was typical.
So Chris, I'd like you to put up Exhibit I, pages, starting with page 109. Maybe I'm telling you the wrong number. Let's see what note you put up. Okay. All right, so that's what I want, but it's not the way mine's labeled. So I don't know if you can zoom that up just a little bit.
Yes.
But starting on April 17th, so scroll down to April 17th. Oh no, it's backwards because the dates are backwards here. From the 24th, go up one more page, go back a page. Okay, down at the bottom there from April 24th. I think the first one's going to say April 24th. Oh, we were on 107, 109, page 109. My bad. Okay, so go down the bottom of that. So April 24th. So this is, you would acknowledge this is your campaign finance report, Mr. Stewart?
Yep.
Okay, and I don't know what, it doesn't really matter which one it is, but so you would acknowledge that starting on April, now I don't see it there. Okay, starting, April 24th, you started buying stamps at the US Post Office. You see that?
I see those items for stamps. I don't agree that it started on April 24th.
We see, well, on this page, it starts on April 24th. See the
Yes.
first line? So if I then look, now go forward a page, Chris. So there's a whole bunch of those. See all those? United States Postal Service, United States Post, stamps, and they're all like what? So 3/9, I said the wrong date. So it looks like basically 3/9 through 4, whatever, you were buying stamps.
Correct.
When I add that up during that time period, it appears that you purchased $4,235 worth of stamps.
Okay.
Okay, would you have any reason to dispute that? I'm pretty good at math. I might have screwed up, but
I'm not going to take your word for it. To be
you want to
honest,
stop
but
and want to have a break and add them up yourself?
I'm not going to do math